Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Prostor. Well, Peter, it's a very hot day in Moscow, but Vladimir Putin has had his work cut out. He's had one of his national Q&As that he holds every year with the Russian public. And you have to admire the man's stamina. I mean, he keeps going for at least 4 hours. It's never less than 4 hours. So some of this goes up to 5 hours. So it's a phenomenal energy that's required to do this. And as is always the case when he has these Q&As, most of the questions were about domestic affairs. Many questions were about COVID and the rest, or all sorts of things that you know about and you follow. There were, however, some rather interesting questions about foreign affairs. He was asked about how come you don't list Ukraine as one of the unfriendly countries. You know, Russia has listed the United States and the Czech Republic as unfriendly countries. In other words, their diplomatic representation in Russia is severely limited, and they're also limited from hiring Russians to perform various administrative tasks. And so he was asked about Ukraine, and said, well, that's because the Ukrainian people are very friendly people. In fact, we are one people. He said this before, but he said it explicitly. Russians and Ukrainians are one people. The Ukrainian leadership, however, is very unfriendly. And he pointedly spoke about something we've also spoken about, this new legislation that's going through the Ukrainian legislature about the indigenous people of the Ukraine and excluding Russian as indigenous people. This, of course, Putin infuriates Putin, and he said he's going to write a long article about this absolute stupidity of labeling Russians as non-indigenous, and he thinks that this is going to lead to serious persecution of Russians. So that was an interesting item. Another very interesting item was his disclosure that in that incident in Crimea with the UK warship last week, he said that an American reconnaissance aircraft was involved. And said that they were coordinating the warship, the British warship, and the US reconnaissance aircraft were clearly coordinating, and that not only was this a provocation, but the goal was to learn more about Russian coastal defenses. And that's why the US surveillance aircraft was there. That raises the magnitude of this incident considerably and becomes a very serious issue. He didn't go further, but something we could talk about, which is, well, what about NATO? I mean, you're kind of getting yourself into a possible shooting war with Russia. Does that mean that Article 5 goes into operation and the whole of NATO is now at war with Russia? So, Putin talked about this. That's a very serious allegation. I doubt, though, that the US media are going to do very much about this. They would just say, oh, Putin's lying, So, and that's that. So anyway, what was your take about this Q&A?
Well, I mean, it's a long-standing tradition, and a lot of Western journalists are very critical of it because it's like begging the czar for some kind of gift or help. Well, it's a long cultural tradition. He is the leader of the Russian people, duly elected. Of course, the czars weren't, okay, but it shows that the leader of the country is aware, acknowledges that you have questions, you want explanations, you want to understand the plans of the government moving forward. I quite like the tradition. It covers a lot of ground. Sometimes it's very, very mundane, and it's very, very, you have to be really inside of domestic politics and what's going on here to really even follow it. But very often he uses this.
But I don't see why that Westerners have any position to criticize. You have political leaders.
Look at Joe Biden.
Yeah, they go on. They first of all they go on with these late night talk show hosts, which is just a free advertising for them because it's all kind of ha 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 banter and show. Isn't he funny? Isn't he clever? So it's just free publicity. And in any case, you'd have presidents who would go on regularly on shows like Larry King, who for many years had these shows in the United States, where people phoned in. That's what they did. They would phone in. Here's the president. Now you phone in with your questions. So how is that any different from this? So anyway, go on.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's not the first time hypocrisy has been raises its ugly head here. Okay, but he does use these occasions to talk about foreign policy in just exactly the way you talked about this recent incident in the Black Sea, to give a kind of an extra layer. And I get tired of saying it, and maybe some people are tired of hearing it. But Russia is acutely aware of its sovereignty. It's much more so than a lot of other people in the world. Seeing these machinations going on right on Russia's border is truly disturbing, even terrifying for some people. And Russians follow very carefully what's going on in Ukraine. I mean, it's something I can't seem to convey to Western journalists, and I remember telling them, it's really, really sad when the height of the attack, the slaughter on the Donbass, I would tell people, I said, when we see those images of the cities in Donetsk and Lugansk, when you see the foliage, that's the foliage we have here in Moscow. When you see the architectural design, that's exactly like the houses are here. And then you see the people, well, that's exactly how the Russians look, okay? I mean, they have a very intimate understanding and sympathy for what's going on there because and then I remember at the height of it, going to work and there would be people in the newsroom, and they'd be terrible. I have grandparents there. I have cousins that live there.
Right.
Okay, I was just there last summer. I mean, it's something the West cannot seem to get a grip on, and refuses to do that. Okay, because what events happening in Ukraine, it's not an international event. It's a local event. It's a domestic event in the minds of tens of millions of people.
Right. That's right. And this is something that when he says the Russians and Ukrainians and the Belarusians are one people, we are, united by language, by culture, by history. That's a very big deal, and I think many Russians think that there's really no difference.
A lot of Ukrainians feel that too.
Exactly, and that the people who are trying to create differences are obviously opportunistic leaders in Kiev, and Westerners, Western interventionists who want to foster as much aggravation and conflict between Ukraine and Russia as possible, and between Belarus and Russia as possible. But clearly, this is something Putin feels very strongly about. And when he says, and he said this before, I intend to write a long article about this, then you could be sure that there will be a long essay, just as the one that he wrote about the origins of World War II. Again, something he feels very strongly about.
And also this creating artificial differences. It's not widely reported in the West, but the number of Western officials actively trying to break up the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, which is, that is like really, at least in my opinion, really extreme. I mean, can you leave the church out of it? Can you leave religion out of it? And it ended up being like a real estate grab. You have people that turn on the mother church, if I can put it that way, to establish their own for their own personal interests or whatnot. That's very, very painful. I mean, and particularly since the church was so persecuted during the Soviet era, and then since then it's been able to get back on its feet and to be very, very much accepted in public life again, very much so, unlike the continued secularization in the West. Right. And then to see them tarnish it in Ukraine is so pathetic. And it shows how ideologically possessed these people are. I mean, they play for keeps, okay? And they don't care what they damage in the process.
Yeah. No, it is absolutely outrageous for Americans in particular to get involved in this. They don't even adhere to the Orthodox Church, but just in order to create conflict, They wanted to effect this separation between the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and the Russian Orthodox Church. Absolutely outrageous, and something that Russians feel strongly about, and they really, really don't like Americans interfering in this. And so, yeah, I mean, what he talks about this, what this Ukrainian legislation, which goes, when you think of what Zelenskyy was promising when he was running,
yeah, very different,
and where he's ended up now, designating Russians as non-indigenous people of Ukraine. I mean, the origins of Russia.
Well, I mean, George, when he would go to Russian majority parts of Ukraine, he spoke Russian to them.
That's right, yes.
Okay? I mean, how he got from there to here, it shows a lack of ability, lack of political instinct, or he's basically a front man for a group of interests, okay? There's a lot of things going on there. But Zelenskyy, I mean, I remember doing crosstalk on him saying, give the guy a chance. Okay? He reached out to all parts of Ukraine, to all Ukrainians. That's exactly what Ukraine needed at the time. And it needs it now. But he's given up on that. Okay. And all to the point where he's stomping his foot on Twitter saying, I want in NATO. I want in NATO.
Yes, yeah. And it's funny, again, Putin was asked, are you going to meet Zelenskyy? He says, well, yeah, I mean, but I have to know what we're going to talk about. See, the problem is that Ukraine isn't really being run out of Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is being run out of Washington. So it's very hard to know why I should talk to Zelenskyy when he's not really running the country. I mean, it's being run out of somewhere else. I mean, he was really insulting about the Ukrainian leadership. So it's like, yeah, it's being run by the United States. So there's no real point in my meeting him unless he can show that he actually runs anything in Ukraine.
Yeah, and then we have this week the sea breeze maneuvers and training of it's like they always like 30 NATO members and associated. I mean, I always like these numbers to show that they're popular somehow. They have such low self-esteem.
Yes, that's 30, yeah.
I can't think of an organization that has a lower self-esteem where they have to always talk themselves up. Okay, I mean, if it were a self-confident, determined, well-focused organization, it wouldn't even need a PR office. But that's all they have. We're important. We are really important. Okay,
30 of us. Wow. Yes.
Okay. And so the exercises are going on now, which of course the Defender incident was just the preamble, and I hope they learn their lesson. Maybe not. I mean, if we're going to have American reconnaissance equipment there watching and trying to induce some kind of provocation,
it's a serious business.
They've been warned.
Well, that's it. I mean, Russia said that next time we will shoot. Or as they used to say at The Sopranos, next time there won't be a next time.
Yes, I mean, again, we've gone from Monty Python to The Sopranos, but there's a lot of wisdom in The Sopranos.
There definitely is. I mean, those people know about power. And,
but we're in a squagmire. Well,
yes, quite.
A squagmire. That's exactly what we're in, a squagmire here.
So if they do plan anything like this, I mean, boom, the Defender would just be at the bottom of the Black Sea. I mean, that's it. And I think he was asked, hey, don't you think this will start World War III? And Putin said, well, I don't think so, because they're going to lose very quickly. So I don't know, they won't have an opportunity to start World War III. I mean, they're so much weaker than us here in the Black Sea. So said, yeah, we're not afraid of it. I mean, that's a very serious thing. You're saying, we're just going to shoot, and and that's it. We don't care.
Well, the thing is, I'm glad you brought this up because it's so very important. It's Article 5 of the NATO Charter of the Washington Treaty, and this is NATO's nightmare. Okay, they think it's their trump card, but it's not. It's their greatest weakness. It's not their strength. It's their weakness. Because if there is a compilation in the Black Sea, a NATO ship is damaged or sunk, you're gonna have to have the Portuguese and the Spaniards and the Italians and the Belgians and everybody else say, well, what were you doing there in the first place?
Right.
We don't have a beef with this here.
Right. Right.
Crimea? Right. Why? We're gonna go to war over Crimea?
Right. Right.
And oh, did Russia initiate the attack? Well, yes, because we were in the Black Sea. Well, why were we there in the? See, it's not going to be an easy sell. It's not going to be any. This is NATO's. See, what they want, it's a form of brinkmanship. They just want to bring it up there, and maybe again, I'll use my a roulette analogy. You know, spin the wheel and see at a certain combination, Russia will make some kind of concession. Okay. Oh, no, let's do it again. Okay, let's do it again. And that's what it is, because they have to keep doing this to show they're relevant. To show they're relevant.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Because they tried all these other things and they didn't really stick. You know, they tried the humanitarian intervention gig. They couldn't really take it much further after bombing Yugoslavia. Then they started the global war on terror. But they couldn't really justify these huge budgets because the terrorists just weren't that formidable. So he was back to the drawing board and Russia. So Russia was wheeled out. Now we can justify these gargantuan budgets because Russia. And that's it. I mean that NATO has to keep justifying its absurd existence. So
yeah, I mean, and when everybody, Russia's defense spending is 1/10 of NATO, 10%.
Yeah.
And George, over the last 3 years, Russia's defense spending has gone down. It's gone down, not up.
Yes. One thing I just wanted to point out, we kind of missed it. It was a few days ago that Maria Zakharova, who is the foreign ministry spokeswoman, and she has a kind of acid tongue, and she was commenting on a speech which wasn't picked up by anywhere by the German defense minister Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer. And what this German defense minister was doing was likening the threat from Russia and China to ISIS. And what Zakharova lets fly in the way Russians sometimes let fly, which is, well, today is June the 22nd. We tend to think about Germans on June the 22nd. And she has some things like on the eve of the 80th anniversary, a terrible anniversary of the start of the Great Patriotic War, which the Germans had unleashed, she chose not to speak about the need to maintain a dialogue with Russia, but urged the Bundeswehr command echelon to build up their muscles to protect the, quote, liberal values, unquote, in the face of Russia. And she kind of went on like this, because, normally Russians always thought, oh, that Nazis, this is Nazi Germany. But this time it was explicitly, we kind of think about Germans on this day, and we really, really don't want to hear BS from Germany. I mean, we're just not in the mood for this.
What's really sad about that, George, is that Ostpolitik was an amazing gambit, and it took courage. It took a vanquished enemy, still recovering, and they said, no, we need peace with our German neighbors, who are Germans after all, and we need peace on this continent after 2 horrific wars. What happened to Ostpolitik? I don't know. I mean, I used to have a higher opinion of Europeans. I'm sorry. I thought we knew history a little bit, because Americans aren't taught history very well. Okay, at least the Europeans, you got a lot of bad stuff going on in the recent past.
That's a very interesting question. I mean, as to why did the Germans abandon their kind of much as they may have disliked Ostpolitik, they knew they'd better shut up when the Russians are around. They still had a memory of all of that. It's strange that they seem to have abandoned that thing. That was still, you had Brandt, Schmidt, Helmut Kohl. They still always maintain that kind of we got to take our lumps. You know, when the Russians start talking about World War II, we may not like it, but we got to take our lumps. This new, you know, the new generation, they don't seem to realize that when they talk like this about Russia, that really just rankles them. You know, it's like, you know, 80 years ago is still not that long ago. I mean, it's, you know, history has moved on, but it's still not that long, 80 years. So, you know, Jonathan sort of, you know, had better be very careful.
Well, you know, one of my big disappointments when it comes to German politics is that Angela Merkel is from the East.
Yeah.
And I naively, I was wrong, I was proven wrong, but I naively thought at the time that someone from the East in a united Germany would be a nuanced way of being able to deal with Russia, because Putin can speak German to her and she can speak Russian to him.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
But that was just, I guess, it's just complete tatters. I think it was a huge missed opportunity for geopolitics. Okay,
I think so, yeah. It is extraordinary that, you know, the idea, we had hoped that somehow the EU under kind of Franco-German leadership would be able to be a third force in world politics, and it hasn't happened. I mean, it's actually, you know, drifted more into the American orbit than it was during the Cold War.
Yep. And it's just always dangling those little shiny things in front of specific elites. Okay. Again, I probably said it for the 10th time here. A public opinion poll year after year after year, a super majority of Germans want American troops to leave. The Iraqi people and the Iraqi parliament want Americans to leave. Okay. Yeah. You've helped enough. Go home.
That's exactly, you've helped enough. Yeah. Well, all right, Peter. We'll of course maintain our focus on.
And we are on locals. We're on locals. So go to thegaggle.locals.com. We're building a community there, putting out more videos. Yeah, I think you've all noticed that our volume is going up. George and I are putting out 2-3 times a day now, doing our best to do that. I don't know if I should say it, but I think the Gaggle store will be making a premiere very, very soon. We're knock on wood, that will be soon. So a little bit of merchandise that you can indulge in. We're working on designs right now, and I think you'll be delighted. From what I've seen, it looks pretty cool.
Very, very nice. You know,
and we also have a tip jar.
Have mugs, we're gonna have T-shirts. We're going to
maybe we'll have a Gaggle tip jar.
Yeah, I think Gaggle tip jar. You can, you know, purchase one of those. It's all of that is extremely helpful to us. So, you know, we appreciate anything. We also have.
And Buddy will be part of the marketing. Okay.
Buddy, yeah, that's right. And of course, we also have a program whereby we have conversations with fellow gagglers. We've had a number of these conversations now. They're a lot of fun. We love doing them. Very enjoyable. We learn a great deal. I hope you do too. So please, you know, make use of this program. It's a great way to know each other.
This is your
this is Buddy of Buddy Tip Jar fame. You know, he looks like he's had his fill from that tip jar.
Yeah, when you're asleep, he's out there on that tip jar. He knows what time you get up, George.
That's right. He's gonna help himself. Yes, and so we're also on Rumble. Look us up on Rumble. And remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. Bye.